I want to get started with my wonderful guest this week, Morgan Irons. But before we get to our conversation, I need to thank Joseph and Lola, who became paid subscribers to Inner Immigrant since last week's episode. If you want to subscribe to support the podcast, you can go to annakeating@substack.com. Thank you guys so much for reading and subscribing. And if you missed last week's podcast with Thomas Chatterton Williams of The Atlantic, go check it out. It was awesome. I'm super stoked to have my friend Morgan Irons on Inner Immigrant. Morgan is a self-taught figurative oil painter in Bozeman, Montana. She's won too many awards for me to mention all of them. But she's a fascinating person, and I think you're really going to enjoy learning about her work. Morgan taught herself to paint beginning in 2015, and she lives and works as a full-time artist. Morgan lives in a cabin abutting national forest land in Montana and is drawn to paintings that depict the land around her home and also to people working the land, particularly in the 19th century. I love paintings. I don't know very much about art, but I would say her paintings are reminiscent of the old masters. And another thing I love is that they can sometimes be massive. I mean, I've seen them, and I'm seeing some paintings that you've done, Morgan, that fill almost an entire wall. So it's awesome to have you on the show. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Anna. I'm so happy to be here to talk with you.
So what I always ask people about on this podcast, because we're living in kind of strange or tumultuous times, is what is bringing them joy? What fills their cup? Both what they do for work, but also what do you do for fun?
Yeah. Joy. Yeah, I feel like I don't know the answer to finding joy in these times specifically, but I've kind of crafted my life in a way that feels healthy and feels productive, and it feels very participatory. I love making things with my hands. I'm so grateful that my work in this world gives me that it's something that's tangible and really interactive. That gives me just a lot of fodder to work with and engage with. So I find joy in it. I also find a lot of strife in it, and I find a lot of meaning ultimately. But yeah, it's the full range of human experience, which allows for that joy, probably.
Yeah, I think that when we think of the word joy, a lot of times we think of like extra super happy, but I don't really think that's what I mean by the word. I think what I mean by the word is the kind of meaning and a certain kind of pleasure that often is on the other side of pain, that often comes through a certain amount of struggle. So for
Mhm.
me, like being a mother, they're interconnected. There's joy in it, right? Or being a writer, but there's also a lot of real struggle, but it makes the moments of joy more meaningful because there is that struggle. So painting can be something like that for you, working with your hands, where it's both a source of great meaning, as you said, and very rewarding, but also frustrating, challenging, I can imagine.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, it's the luckiest life, and I think there's a lot of human happy place in in this way of being and creating things and putting things in the world, and um yeah, but joy is certainly present in my life.
Yeah. So I want to ask you how you knew you were an artist, because you don't have an MFA, you didn't go to art school.
Mhm.
So how did you realize that you were a painter?
Yeah, so I grew up in Idaho, and I didn't really have any access to working artists or art as a profession or way of being, and um when I moved to Montana about 10 years ago now, after college, after another life, I started meeting working artists for the first time. And it just completely shifted my path. I was working at the hospital doing testing for neuropsychologists, like working in a windowless room. And as soon as I saw the path, I quit my job immediately, like within a week or two. On a Friday, didn't give notice, and, um, Yeah, it was very, very, very clear to me, and I'd always had, an aptitude for drawing and hadn't really painted yet, but yeah, as soon as I saw it was possible. We have great, galleries here in Bozeman, a great working artist community. It feels really, um, yeah, really possible here
Yeah.
in a way that I didn't expect when I moved to Montana. I thought, artists lived in a big city and it was sort of this out of touch realm that I couldn't access as someone from not that world.
Because you're from a small town in Idaho, right?
Yeah, half of my childhood in a small town and then in Boise, which is now a big city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Big,
Mhm.
big-ish.
Yeah,
There's a
maybe that's
spectrum.
comparative now to
I
my
mean, what you're
current.
saying is so interesting though, because it goes to representation of like if you can't see it, it's hard to imagine
Mhm,
being it. And so you've actually met
mhm,
artists because there's this huge art scene people probably don't know in Montana, also in
mhm.
Wyoming. We think of
Yeah,
New York or LA, but there's this huge art scene also in the American West. So you said it was seeing other painters and artists that made you think you could do it.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. I think that's how my subconscious works. It just needs an example.
But I
Mhm.
think it's also really interesting though, because you didn't have any formal training. It's very brave. And I have huge respect for just quitting your job and trying to do something like that because people probably thought you were mad or crazy.
Yeah, definitely.
Because they're like, you have a degree, you paid for this education. What are you
Yeah.
doing? Yeah. So you have
Yeah,
to be a little bit crazy in a good way, right? In a sense, to listen to what
definitely.
your heart was saying.
Yeah, I think when you're young, especially, I was 20, probably 22 or 23, 24, and yeah, you have to have that real mix of kind of a naive confidence. And yeah, and I didn't have, I still don't have family relying on me or children, or I was able to kind of make some risky decisions and it's pulled through in some miraculous way.
It's paid off. I mean, it's obviously what you're
Mhm.
meant to do, but I wonder sometimes if there's other people who have a calling like that and they don't listen to it
Mhm.
because they're getting so much advice saying don't do it because it is risky. There is a chance
Yeah.
that it won't work out. With anything
Oh,
worth
yeah.
there's always a chance that it won't work out.
Yeah. No, I'm so glad that I listened to my inner inner wisdom and I was right. Yeah, it was really yeah.
What are the pros and cons of being a self-taught artist versus going to school? Because I know an MFA, kind of
Mhm.
like an MBA, can be a great place for people to kind of network and
Mhm.
make connections. And so you are living in Montana, a smaller town. You know some artists. You're teaching yourself. Kind of, what are the pros
Mhm.
and cons of going about it independently versus going about it through some kind of system like that?
Yeah. I think about this a lot. It's I think that it's ultimately a net positive for me to be self-taught, but there are times that it was really, really hard to not have, yeah, a formal education for one, knowing a real system and a real technique, and I've had to kind of piece that together over time. But I think that there was something in my process that kind of kept me in this, sort of like I was this sort of like entity that was doing my thing. I was like very self inwardly focused, following my own curiosities, and then it sort of like delivered that as this like whole package, just sort of like whole invitation. And so when I first got into a gallery, it was very clear that this is what I was doing, and I was sort of this like solo entity, I guess. It was really interesting and really kind of delivered some voice and some, um, yeah, just something was happening there, and then when that would intersect with people, like with gallerists or with collectors or other artists or things, um, it was just really clear what I was up to. I think,
Yeah, you
yeah.
have a very unique style and voice, and I think, so my husband's a furniture maker. That's how we came upon your art, and we have Keating Woodworks, our family business, and then I am a writer, and we never did any kind of training or MFA or anything like that as well. And I
Mhm.
think one of the things I think of as a negative is the lack of connections, But one of the positives might be that you sound, or your art looks different or unique, because you have kind of honed your own particular style, and your craft. So I want to talk about Montana and what drew you to Montana, because like we were speaking of earlier, people don't think of Montana as a place to be an artist necessarily, but you definitely seem to thrive there, and you chose to live not only in Montana, but also in the middle of the woods in a very remote place. So why did you choose that place, and how does it inform your work and your life?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, when I first moved to Montana, I was 21, and I had been living in Alaska before this, working in a really remote area of Alaska, and um, working in the fly-in bear viewing camp out in Chinitna Bay, and in a fishing camp, and I loved the bigness of the landscape there, and feeling myself sort of small. And when that season was ending in my life, I had this real inkling that I needed to go, start my life somewhere, and I needed to be in kind of back to what I was just speaking to, this sort of like protected way
Mm.
to learn and grow and learn myself. And so I chose to move to a little cabin in Montana, and it was the best thing I had done for myself at that time. And I've been living this way for the last 11 years. And
That's awesome.
yeah.
I mean, I follow you on Instagram, and people can follow Morgan Irons on Instagram because not only to see her beautiful paintings, but also to see the beautiful place where you live.
Mhm.
But I think as a woman, A, being an artist is so radical. B, living alone in the woods is radical. Is it ever scary living that
Mhm.
close to wild things, living in nature? You can't just knock on a neighbor's door and say, "Hey,
Mhm.
I need to come over. I have a problem," right? Living kind of in a more monastic, almost cloistered, remote
Mhm.
lifestyle so you can make your art. Is it ever scary for you living alone in the woods?
Um, you know, I think that I would be way more afraid of living in town or in a city. I think humans scare me way more. I think out here, for the most part, the rhythms of things are pretty predictable, and um, yeah, I don't feel super afraid. There
Yeah.
have been scary things, but um, I don't know, it's kind of like nature is a bit more understandable to me, or a bit more like I can understand why things happen more in nature than in town or in the city with other humans. And maybe that's
But you have had some encounters with wild things. You're not only a wonderful painter, you're also an awesome writer, and I always think you need to get a book deal to talk about
I
what
love
it's
that
like
deal.
to write in the woods. So maybe we need to, after this, work on getting you that. But
Yeah,
um, you
please.
wrote on Instagram about your encounter with the moose. Can you share that a little
Mhm.
bit?
Yeah, yeah, that was about a year ago this week, actually. And yeah, I live out against forest, and I walk every morning for an hour or 2 in the morning, and, I was doing my normal morning routine and sitting out with my dog Bear. We were about a mile and a half from the house as the crow flies, and we were sitting I was drinking my coffee, and I saw a cow moose, a mother moose. She was like 100 yards away, so it wasn't super alarming, and she was the ninth moose I'd seen that week. They're always here. My neighbor jokes that I have some sort of moose portal in my yard because 'cause they're just an ever-present thing. And I love the moose. They're these massive, magnificent kind of, um they feel almost like paranormal presences at times, like the way that they can appear and disappear, and they just sort of are this, like, roving mass on the land. But this day, this moose decided that she wanted me out of her awareness, and she, ended up basically pursuing me for an hour and a half and over many miles. And um, yeah, there were many times that she could have definitely ended my existence here, but didn't. And there was kind of this pinnacle moment of we did this dance through the woods, and I dove off a ravine, and as I was falling off this ravine, she dove on top of me, and we kind of like slid down this ravine together, and I rolled under trees, and she was stomping around me, and um yeah, I fully left my body, saw everything happening from above, and yeah, it was a really really intense moment. And yeah, that experience of feeling this like real animal fear was pretty changing. And when I'm out in the woods now, it's different, but it's not worse. It's actually a little bit more interesting, and it's kind of a more full relationship. I feel like before I was maybe not actually in right relationship with the animals around me. I was very comfortable. I was very sort of flippant with myself out there. I just would kind of feel protected, and I was protected in this experience too. But um, yeah, things are things are more interesting now.
You feel like you weren't in right relationship with the animals before. What do you mean by that?
I think that I had had so many positive experiences. I mean, 99.9% of the time. And I think that I sort of felt this like if you don't see the other side of an animal,
Mhm.
and see sort of the animal nature in us and how we when we're out, when we're out on the land, we are just, bodies and their bodies, and we both have our own interests, and they don't always align. And yeah, I think that I wasn't respecting boundaries.
Yeah.
And yeah.
It's weird for us because we live in this time where death is so separated from us, from our
Mhm.
experience, like, death happens out of the home. It used to happen in the home.
Mhm.
Birth happens out of the home. It used to happen in the home. And people used to see a lot more of the fragility of human life. And I
Mhm.
think living in a place where you live and having encounters like that with wild animals definitely
Mhm.
connects you to this kind of universal human experience that probably humans used to always have, of being
Mhm.
aware of our mortality and our fragility. And in a way, it's terrifying. In another way, it can be very life giving because you're so thankful after an experience like that to be alive and to be well and
Mhm.
to have
Yeah.
another day to breathe in and out. Um, and not taking those things for granted, getting to wake up and walk with your dog or,
Mhm.
see the snow again. So that kind of
Yeah.
part of it can be quite life giving, I think.
Oh, absolutely. It's my walks now are so much more rich. I For a few months after the experience, I felt like my senses were so heightened. I could smell things differently. Became this sort of like I felt like I became like 50% more animal in a way.
Yeah.
And I'm really grateful for the experience. And it
Yeah.
was mhm.
And you need to write a book about it and about
I would
all of
love
the
to.
things. We'll talk about that afterwards.
Yes.
So I will talk a little bit about your paintings. I want to talk about the archetypes in your work, the role of women in your work. So often
Mhm.
you depict people working in the fields, often a husband and wife, many times a woman alone. One of my favorite of your paintings is called Mother, and it's a picture of a woman who has a basket in one hand. She's been working in the fields, and on the other hip, she has a toddler who is nursing. So I wanted to talk to you about what has drawn you to that particular archetype and the role of archetypes in your work? Why are you drawn to the archetype of the mother?
Mhm, mhm. Yeah, yeah, the archetypes are really key to me. I think that there's something about, I want my work to be work that, any person can walk into the gallery and see the painting and understand it and know what I'm talking about and know kind of how it mirrors them and who they know in their life that it mirrors and parts of themselves. And so archetypes, are these subconscious building blocks that we use to kind of make meaning, and their blueprint for how to be and how to live, and how we make meaning, and how these figures relate to other figures. There's a lot of material in archetypes to work with as an artist, and to make work that is accessible and more universal to the viewer is really interesting to me. And I am surrounded by incredible women here in Montana. There is just, yeah, endless material there. And I also attend births as a doula, so it's, getting to see the full range of the experience of womanhood. And yeah, as soon as I started attending birth, I don't know that I've actually painted a man since.
I love it. I love it.
Um, yeah, it's just, yeah, being close to that miracle has been really fascinating. And I have so many friends who are incredible mothers, and so the women in my paintings are women I know dearly and closely, and um, women I've attended their births and seen their babies come in, and um, yeah, it's so rich.
Yeah, so you actually use women you know as a
Mhm,
model and paint
mhm.
from the model. Okay.
I do, yeah.
That's
Yeah,
really
that's
interesting.
cool.
That's awesome. I love that you have them posed for you and then they can be in some way an inspiration to your work.
Mhm. Yeah, like that mother painting Claire, that's her 3rd baby that she's holding in the painting, and she's um, this beautiful mother, and I wanted to make her sort of this icon of, um, like, her posturing and, like, the weight of her and the sort of dualness and the balance of the basket and her baby, and putting her against this sky, and yeah, it's
I
really.
could talk to you for like hours because I have so much to say about this. And I love that you draw and paint women because, on the one hand, right, we have this kind of moment in American history where we are, especially like I'm thinking on the right, kind of being a mother is glorified, right? But we see it as a mother who kind of from the 1950s who maybe stayed home and gets the
Mhm,
groceries and then the husband goes to work. But what your work does, because you have chosen what inspires you is this earlier period in history, is it points to what was actually the case prior to, post World War II economy. That's actually kind of a new idea of woman stays home, husband goes to work,
mhm,
is this kind of agrarian or household economy where everyone is working, I
mhm,
think about in the 1900s. And that's kind of the period that my husband and I wanted with our wood shop. We wanted to be out of our house so that it would be kids working, husband working, wife working, everybody's working together. And on a farm, in a more primitive version of life or in a hunter gatherer society, everybody was working together, you know?
yeah,
And the way your work depicts women gives them such beauty and dignity because her labor in the field is depicted and her labor feeding the baby from her own body is depicted. And they're not mutually exclusive. They're all
mhm,
happening at the same time, the work on the land and the work of making and sustaining human life. And I just love that you give that dignity to women's work when historically it hasn't always been valued, or seen. Um, yeah, so I want to thank you for that, just as a woman.
yeah.
um, because it can be very difficult to, again, looking at representation, to see yourself reflected in art in a way that feels relatable and
Mm,
inspiring.
mm. Oh, well, thanks, Anna. Yeah, I've loved putting those paintings in the world, especially, the nursing paintings. They don't always I get a lot of beautiful messages from women, but they're not always celebrated in the market or in certain galleries or spaces, and I've been really lucky to have certain gallerists that will show them and be excited about them, but it's been an interesting
You
interesting
get
journey
negative
and
feedback? You get negative feedback? People don't like your
sometimes.
same painting? Really?
Yeah, yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
all I want.
I
I just I want a big one over my couch. I just want them all. I want all of them. Well, that's interesting. I wonder if there's something about it that is still seen because American culture, because we were a culture that was founded by Puritans. I
Mhm.
wonder if there's still a little bit of that American discomfort with the body.
I think so, and I think I forget that just being around so many amazing, women all the time, and it's just a normal thing, and, um, yeah, I totally forget that it's maybe confronting or yeah, but
Well, I mean, as a doula or a birth worker, you must be comfortable with bodies.
Mhm.
That's about as
Yeah.
realistic as
Yeah.
that's yeah, yeah. So, I would like to ask you about the analogy. Sometimes I like it, sometimes it bothers me. Sometimes people compare making a work of art to giving birth.
Mm.
I think sometimes it bothers me because it's usually men who say that. Um, but it is an interesting analogy. Do you feel since you have worked in birth as a doula and you are this incredible painter, do you feel like
Mhm.
making a work of art is something like labor for you, or is it similar?
Yeah, I was thinking about this ever since you brought that to my attention a little while ago. I think I too hesitate to make the comparison. However, um, there are things about birth that I think would really serve an artist in making art, in making a painting. I was thinking about the idea of the surrender that happens, and in birth, there's often a peak intensity, and then there's a surrender that usually comes through afterward, um, and I know that in my work, I can be incredibly I can have a really tight fist grip on my paintings and on my career, and I think when I do have moments of surrender, when more intuition comes through, when more ease comes through, that is when things really surprise me in a beautiful way, and the work gets better, and I think there's something to that that I would like to work through. Mhm.
Yeah, it's a very strange thing with anyone who has a creative career or like even an athlete. I think it applies to a lot of types of
Mhm.
work where on the one hand it's obviously important to try hard.
Yeah.
But there's also a letting go, right? And
Uh-huh.
not holding this extra tension about the outcome, which is somewhat out of your control.
Mhm.
I think about rock climbing because I'm a climber as well. It's very counterintuitive that you don't want to hold tension anywhere except for where you need it. So you're
Mhm.
trying very hard, maybe with this right hand, but you don't want to be holding tension in your face or, similar to birth, right? Similar to making a work of art is that you're on the one hand trying so hard to make this painting, I can imagine, as beautiful or as perfect as you can. But on the other hand, there's a lot of surrender and letting go because there's so much that's out of your control about how it's received, for example.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely, and yeah, when I can get into the sort of flow state of painting, last night I was working on this sky, and it's a really expressive sky, and I wasn't thinking anymore about what I was doing, and my hand was just moving, and it was sort of this beautiful and it's the best state when you can get into that. There's nothing better.
Yes, we're all looking for
Mhm.
flow, especially now. What do you think is the role of a painter in this moment in the United States? Like, do you see yourself as having a role as an artist in this particular moment?
Mm,
That's a tough
a
one.
small question, Anna.
It's a big question. You can just say pass.
I'll give it a go. Yeah, I feel it's challenging in these times when things are so urgent and things are so scary and changing, and it can sometimes feel like, am I am I doing enough, or am I participating in the way that I should be, or but I think in my own experience, I have found that I have a specific way of being in the world, and that is to bring this art through, and whatever I need to do to make that happen needs to happen. So, um, if that means that I can't pay such close attention to everything happening in the world, and that's okay for me because it means that my work will happen. And I think that everyone has, I think they call it like the mythopoetic identity, which is something that we each have our specific niche in the world, and there are people who are incredible, loud activists, and people that are incredible fundraisers and on the boots on the ground sort of work. And I think that there are people whose work maybe is more internal and is in writing or creating, and I think they're all really, really important. Hmm.
Yes, and I think it's so important that people don't stop making things because, as you said when you first talked about being inspired to be an artist, you never know the impact that your work might have on someone, kind of the butterfly effect. And if you stop making the work that you alone can make, then it won't have that impact in the world. But it can feel like small or, like we make chairs and tables and cupboards and, that's not world historic, but it's very important in its own way to making the world
Yeah.
full or more human, or even just having other people see you and say, I could become an artist because I saw this painting in a gallery in Bozeman. You never really know the impact of your work on the world, and you don't want to stop making it because it matters. I want to read you this poem because it reminds me of your paintings. Is that okay?
I love that.
Okay. Do you know the Donald Justice poem is called There Is a Gold Light in Certain Old Paintings?
Mm-mm, mm-mm.
I'm so excited to share it with you because it's basically about your paintings, I think. The first stanza is, I'll do this so I'm looking straight ahead. There is a gold light in certain old paintings that represents a diffusion of sunlight. It is like happiness when we are happy. It comes from everywhere and from nowhere at once. This light and the poor soldiers sprawled at the foot of the cross share in its charity equally with the cross. And then I'm going to skip to the last stanza because this is speaking to our moment. He writes, the world is very dusty, uncle. Let us work. One day the sickness shall pass from the earth for good. The orchard will bloom. Someone will play the guitar. Our work will be seen as strong and clean and good. And all that we suffered through having existed shall be forgotten as though it never existed.
Oh, you'll have to send me that one. Wow. Oh, that
I just
speaks
wanted
so
to,
much.
yeah, go ahead.
I was just thinking about actually like your family and the woodworking and just yeah, the beauty of just good solid effort and work and oh.
I think it's so easy to become despairing when you see people who are making a lot of money and making the world an uglier place. When he speaks of like the world is very dusty, uncle.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then when you see a painting and it moves you, or you listen to someone play the guitar, or you take a walk in the woods and you remember that there is goodness in the world and there is beauty, and you seek that out. Don't forget that the goodness is there. And don't forget that even a small act of goodness matters. Even a small act of creating beauty really matters. And I'm so thankful that I get to know people who like yourself, try to make the world more beautiful. Because sometimes when you read the news, you just feel like everybody's an asshole. And that's not true. That's not true. There's much more good than bad, in the world.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
um, and I think that one more thing I'll share with you is I love this author. I don't know if you know Iris Murdoch.
Mm.
She wrote this book called The Bell, and there's a character in the book who's completely lost and she doesn't know what to do, and she's in a very toxic relationship, and she goes to the National Gallery and she sees this painting and it pulls her out of her solipsism and her self-absorption. And she says that she almost wants to kneel before it. because it pulls her out of herself and back into the real. She feels the love that the painter has for his subjects.
Mhm.
And after looking at this painting, she realizes that she has to change her life and get out of this relationship she's in and do this and that differently. And I just want to say that every artist, I think, has that power, and it's hard to describe because it's not direct, like going to therapy, like,
Mhm.
"Oh, my therapist told me to leave him." It's more indirect of something that touches your heart, a piece of music, a song, a painting, and the beauty of it calls something out in yourself, calls you to something higher, gives you courage. So that's what your work does, I think, and I hope more people can encounter it. Is there a place where people can see your paintings, your work, your prints?
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you, Anna. That's gonna give me some good inspiration today on the
Oh,
long
good.
studio day ahead. Um, yeah, people can see my work on I share a lot on Instagram. I'm gonna start a Substack. I want to do some of that. I have work in a gallery here, Old Main in Bozeman. I have work coming to Jackson at Altamira Gallery and Santa Fe in the springtime. So it's gonna be yeah. And I'm at my website too, morganirons.com. I have some prints and some things and yeah, I want my work to be accessible to all, so I often do, small studio releases too. And yeah, so just
That's awesome. That's awesome, and I have to plug Keating Woodworks too because we are
Mhm.
gonna be building a showroom for our furniture, and we are so honored and excited that Morgan is gonna let us show one of her paintings in that showroom. So when you're making your pilgrimage to Bozeman or to the gallery in Santa Fe or
Mhm.
to, what is it, Jackson Hole, Wyoming, maybe someday you could come to Colorado Springs too and see a Morgan
Nice.
Aaron's painting and maybe buy it and hang it in your home, and I think that looking at a painting is countercultural because you're making room in your life for quiet and for reflection and for stillness and for beauty. So check out Morgan
Mhm.
Irons, you guys. Thank you so much, Morgan, for being on Inner Immigrant.
Thank you, Anna. It's been so great to talk with you.
Thank you.